I think we're ready to do this. It's the only way. We've got to get this done. I want a redemption. Damn it! Like so. Okay, so we got Marcus, my friend Marcus from the Vaadin team, also my friendly friends, my partners, and friends over there. We did a webinar yesterday, buddy. We did one. It was great.
We sure tried at least.
Sorry.
We sure tried at least.
Yeah, we sure tried, and we were smited, whatever the past particle of smited is by JavaScript, and what the hell? Like I just it's just so frustrating because it was an otherwise pretty okay demo, right? It was like we all the moving parts that needed to move in the ways they needed to move moved, and yet somehow right at the very finish line tripped on a banana peel, the worst.
And sure enough, when I checked out that demo code right after, it worked for me. You gave it a go this morning, it worked. So I'm guessing the moons were not aligned yesterday for NPM to be friendly for
not great.
I don't know what happened there.
Me either. So we're gonna do it again as though it's the first time. And I'm glad you're all here, chat, because we need some support, and if you have questions, of course, we'll talk about it, but we're going to do this demo straight through. No F-ups, this reminds me of a very important point, which is that JavaScript is not real. It's not a thing you should be building businesses or software on. I'm not a fan. Who else is not a fan? Douglas Crockford. Douglas Crockford is the he created JSON, right? Let's see, where's that article? Here we go. Did you see this? It's very important that we always remember this. Just keep this in your heart. There's back in oh, by the way, hi, Evan, good to see you. Hello, how are you? Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, hi, hello, everybody. Good. Okay, so good to see you all. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to try this again. We're going to redeem ourselves because that demo just made me sad. It stuck with me throughout the balance of my day yesterday. I'm like, oh, wait, after a demo like that, I was like, I wanted to go back to bed and start the day over again. It just felt wrong, It's just not good. So anyway, I'm reminded of this. 10 years, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 2010, a guy named Donald, not Ferguson. Was it Ferguson? Yeah, Donald Ferguson. He was the former CTO of CA Technologies, and he did an interview on the BBC in which he was asked, "What is your biggest mistake, either personal or professional?" And he said that while he was at IBM, he built something called WebSphere. And I was like, that's a moment of sanity. That's where somebody that's where somebody realizes the ridiculous situation in which they found themselves. Einstein regretted creating the nuclear bomb. This guy regretted creating WebSphere, and Douglas Crockford, who created JSON, regrets JavaScript. Right? He says the best thing we can do today to JavaScript is to retire it, which I completely agree with. Right? So JavaScript, the world's most popular programming language, blah blah blah, made this. He said, the best thing we can do today is to JavaScript is to retire it. 20 years ago, I was one of the few advocates for JavaScript. Its cobbling together of nested functions and dynamic objects was brilliant. I spent a decade trying to correct its flaws. I had minor success with ES5, but since then, there's been a strong interest in further bloating the language instead of making it better. So JavaScript, like the other dinosaur languages, has become a barrier to progress. We should be focused on the next language, which should look more like E than JavaScript. Now, to be fair, friends, what he's saying is the original JavaScript, which is my least favorite flavor of it, right? My least favorite incarnation of it. He's saying that's the best one. All this stuff to add types and classes and all that other stuff, since, I guess, in his opinion, degrades the experience. So we disagree about why JavaScript shouldn't be allowed to continue as it is, but we both agree not great. And this is just me. Obviously, I've written a lot of JavaScript and TypeScript and all that. I've never loved the experience, but yesterday it just really made me upset because it's like this is a tool for building. This is the NPM, right? We had what was the issue we had yesterday, Marcus?
Well, according to Arthur, the root cause was most likely NPM registry being kind of off kilter a little bit. So most likely the moon and how it was aligned with the stars and the planet and everything was not
It was
not
the
working for us.
tooling around the JavaScript ecosystem, which is not to discredit my initial hesitation and reluctance to recommend JavaScript language. Oh, it's just so flimsy. So okay, I don't love JavaScript. I can do it. It's fine. I just don't think we should be. I think there's better ways to go forward. So I'm all in on the do as little of it as you can sort of mentality, which is why I love even Hilla. Hilla has JavaScript, but it's done in such a way that you can do as little as you need to get a nice user interface, and then get straight back to the interop with the backend services, right? Endpoints they call them. And I love Vaadin because for like a huge class of applications, when I just want something really quick and I just want to get something up and running, I can just use Java, right? Which I trust. Yeah. But of course, even there, you have to deal with the tooling, as we discovered yesterday. You said yesterday that that tooling.
And one really great update to that, though, is that with the upcoming release in early June, even so in 24.0, we got rid of having to run npm for anything dev related. So if you start dev mode, it doesn't start to like build anything with npm. And as of 24.1, which is out in a few weeks, it will not do that when you're doing a production build. Instead, it has pre-built bundles that you can use. So unless you really want to opt in to optimize things in your npm configuration, you don't have to install it, you don't have to run it. So
hell yeah. So is it suitable for like
people like Josh? There are kind of brighter days ahead.
Oh, I can't wait. Is it suitable for like an air gapped environment, that kind of thing?
It should. So essentially what it does or will do at that point is like the jars will contain pre-built bundles. So it'll have a kind of a main bundle, and then depending on if you're using some of the heavier components, it will pull those in runtime for you. But you don't have to build those there. They're distributed with the actual dependency. So you just have your like Maven or Gradle dependency, and everything else just sort of works.
Okay, sign me up. I'm in. I'm all about this. I'm all about like getting to production faster. Okay, so now don't get me wrong, friends. It's not that Vaadin is like it's not meant to just sidestep JavaScript. It's just meant to be the most productive way to build a user interface, regardless of which way you do it. I love Vaadin. It's just been there. We talked about this yesterday. You and I, we were like, how many years have you and I known each other?
10, decade, right? Probably, at least.
Sorry?
10 years at least,
yeah,
maybe?
Exactly. Like, it's just a long time. And I've been working with the Vaadin team even longer than that. It's just been a really interesting ecosystem. So Vaadin, for those of you who don't know, just a great way to build apps, and a huge part of the I don't know, the chasm that people have to cross to build web apps today is that there are two parts. There's the back end and the front end. And frankly, for a huge number of sort of use cases, those skills don't necessarily need to be separate. In fact, I would default to not making them separate, and only when you need to then tease them apart into separate languages and skills and developer types and so on. So we're going to go ahead and look at Spring Boot 3.1 and sort of some of the amazing opportunities it brings to Vaadin developers. Now, yesterday what we did was a Spring Boot 3.1 focused talk to the Vaadin audience. However, today we're on my channel just to redeem the demo, right? We're going to start the demo soon. But so maybe we should talk a little bit more about Vaadin, just because like I hear it's not so for sure that everybody's going to know what Vaadin is, right? What do you have to, how would you describe it?
Well, I think you touched on a lot of the important parts. So really what we try to do is make web app development as productive as possible for folks who like to work in Java, who are running on Java servers. So essentially it gives you a whole bunch of the kind of building blocks you need when you're building apps. So anything from buttons and text fields all the way up to data grids and menus and dialogues and editors and whatnot. And it gives you a component-based model where you can put these together in layouts and assign routes by adding an annotation on your class, and then the framework will make sure that that gets rendered in a browser. The events get passed from your browser to your server and back, and essentially what your code ends up looking like is more like you're building a desktop application, but it runs as just a normal web application as far as the web browser is concerned. So I think that's pretty cool.
It's amazingly cool. And this isn't like a ASP.NET where you have like server-side state for components where you have to do postbacks. This is actual browser client-side components with full dynamic sort of in-browser capabilities but whose business logic is written in Java code running in the backend, right? But it's just you'll have to see it. It's just pretty amazing what's going to happen here. So let's just dive right into it, huh? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to redeem ourselves here today, friends. Today we're going to build this demo. It's going to be, you just watch. We're going to get to the finish line. And it's going to work. So everybody, fingers crossed. I want to hear in the chat. Fingers crossed. This is going to be fine, right? Nothing's going to go wrong. Everything's going to be perfect. Yeah, there. See, we got some hearts. We got like that. We got support. This is what we need right now. This time, put it out there in the universe.
Send us good vibes. Like send us good vibes. We're going to make this happen.
I'm going to make it happen. And if it doesn't happen, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've already given up JavaScript for Lint, but like,
yeah. Well, if for whatever reason this fails to work, we can always try the beta version of that newer Vaadin version that doesn't run npm at all, just so we can try that out.
I would love to try that. We should try it out anyway. Just even if it does work, let's go ahead and update the code and see how that goes. It might be a little bumpy because it's early days yet, but always worth a shot. Okay, so here's the code from yesterday. This is where you would go get the code that we know works because we took the code this morning. Both of us individually took the code and ran it and compiled it, and it ran just fine this morning on each of our individual machines without any undue like coercion. We just did the exact thing I did on stream yesterday, and it worked. Oh, yes, Daniel. This is the way. This is the way right there. I started using Vaadin a few weeks ago. So far, it's fantastic and very easy to understand. Going to convince my boss to buy a pro license. Hell
Glad
yes.
to have you on board.
It pays dividends. If you just want to build it, like we're not all gonna write the next Gmail, okay? It just doesn't need to be that complicated. Just like and I think Vaadin just by its architecture is kind of it's like it's already well situated because the current craze in the JavaScript world is server-side rendered pages and all that stuff, you know? Like
it's funny how we're coming back full circle to server side and like even monolith to start getting
right, yeah.
recent
Vaadin
like
just stayed the course the entire time and it's back to beautiful again, you know, like
it was Matti from my team just recently did some math on just like folks are always a little bit concerned on like, well, it has a little bit of server side state for maintaining that kind of business logic and the componentry, like does that scale? And essentially like with a modern like mid-range AWS node, you can host, like if you don't do anything too crazy, you can host like from just a pure memory standpoint, like easily millions of concurrent users. So that's probably not going to be like the biggest bottleneck you have here. Like your database, your other services will most likely say no before that becomes like the main issue you run into.
And we talked about this yesterday. There are like some free easy buttons as well in the works as well, right? Like for server-side session state, which there's some of course, every app has that, but Vaadin a little bit more than maybe a completely restless client-side spa might, a little bit. Even for that, there's Spring Session. You plug that in and you can automatically serialize your session state to Redis or Hazelcast or whatever, you know. And then for concurrency, like if Vaadin builds on the servlet API, we talked about this yesterday. There's Project Loom, right? Project Loom gives you even more scale. What were the numbers that you just described on? Was that on Java 20 or 17 or 21 with Loom?
That was 17 if I recall correctly. So like it would probably like with a more I mean with Java 20, like both more efficient garbage collector, Project Loom, all kinds of goodies, like things get better even without you doing anything besides essentially changing the version number. That's pretty cool.
And the thread pool, but like it's just it's fine, don't worry. Okay, so we're gonna build this application today, friends, just fingers crossed. Okay, so here we go. So again, this is mostly a Spring Boot demo, so might be redundant for a lot of you, but it's okay if this works, and it's gonna work. All right, so we're going to take a look today at how to build an application using Spring Boot 3.1, the newly just released 18th of May release of Spring Boot 3.1. So I guess 7 days ago, actually. Was that a week ago? I guess it was 25, 6, 7. Yeah, so 7 days ago, 18th of May. And I was actually in Barcelona with Simon, who's in the chat today. So say hello to my friend Simon. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build an application called Beautiful Vaadin. And this application, we're going to use Spring Boot 3.1. we're going to use the defaults for the dependency for the build tools here. We've got Gradle as the default now. Obviously, this is a new thing. I don't know when the last time most people looked at that is, but we changed that last October. This year I've got a New Year's resolution. I've decided I'm going to lose some weight and learn Gradle, and I'm definitely learning Gradle. So there's that. We've got Spring Boot 3.1. We've got the version of Java. Obviously, friends, you have a lot of choices that you could make, but here, friends, there's only really 2 choices that you should make, right? 2 out of these 4 radio buttons. These other 2, these are just for the memes. These are just for the lulz. These are just things that you could choose, but that you should absolutely never choose. And then finally, we have the dependencies. And so obviously, first and foremost, we're going to add Vaadin, the latest and greatest version of Vaadin. We're going to add GraalVM native image support. We're going to add the web support. We're going to add Spring Data JDBC. And we want the dev tools. We want the test container support. And anything else? Do I need anything else?
Let me see here. We did test container, Spring Data JDBC. I think we have everything we need.
I think we got everything. Okay. Web, JDBC, dev tools, test containers, Vaadin, GraalVM.
Oh wait, I think you had reactive web for the web client stuff that we're doing.
Oh, and Postgres. Oh, we need a database. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, by the way, so there's a question in the chat. Can you use it with a Spring Reactive Stack? You need Tomcat somewhere, but you can also use Tomcat and the Reactive Stack together. That's always been the case.
Yeah.
Great question. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit generate, open this up in our IDE. And again, it's just a regular stock standard Spring Boot application. Going to open this up in your IDE. We did this demo, Marcus and I, we did this demo 48 hours ago in Visual Studio Code. So we actually know it works just fine there. But we're going to do this in IntelliJ today. Okay, so Vaadin application. And public static void main. Oh, look at that. You've never heard of Vaadin? Well, you're in the right place, friend. This is the chance to learn about something awesome. And also Spring Boot 3.1, but Vaadin is the star here today. So we're going to build a new application that manages data of type post. So we're going to have a integer post ID. We're going to have a string title and a string body. Right? Okay, and this is a basic data type that we're going to then persist in our database here. Okay, so we're going to use @id, and then we're going to create an interface to manage it, a post repository that's going to extend the list CRUD repository. So a little while ago, they changed the defaults so that Spring Data repositories returned an iterable of T instead of a list of T, people ask, how do I find all and get a list? Well, you just extend list CRUD repository nowadays. Okay, so now first things first, friend. I'm gonna talk to a database. I just mentioned that, right? But I'm developing locally on my machine here, and normally if I were developing locally before Spring Boot 3.1, I'd go to application.properties and I'd say Spring data source URL password username etc. And I'd set all that up, and then I'd have a separate property file called application -dev.properties or something like that. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to set up all this extra stuff in my code just for the development world, right? I don't even want it in my production code at all. In fact, I want to have it separately walled off from the production code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my test code, delete the sort of useless test that gets generated for you by default. Whoops, I hit the wrong button there, friends. Don't worry. We've got this. We got the technology. Okay, we're going to go here and we're going to create a test Vaadin application. Okay, Vaadin application. By the way, Marcus, what does Vaadin stand for? What does it mean?
Vaadin is a Finnish language word for a reindeer. So if you look at the logo, or if you type out a curly bracket and an angled bracket, you'll see like the little reindeer ASCII symbol. And I mean, there's nothing like super symbolic. It was just a word that wasn't used for a whole bunch of other stuff online. So if people search for the word, they'll likely find the right thing instead of something entirely different. So
yeah, I love it. Okay, so here's the basic setup in the test. I'm going to have a public static void main in my test code. This is separate from my production public static void main. I'm going to tell this main method to start up the application by delegating to my main method and to have the normal string arguments that we get from the public static void main. But we want to augment the configuration that Spring already has, from the production code by adding this class as a configuration source. Okay, so at configuration, voila. Okay, and the reason I want to do that is because I want to tell Spring that during this cycle, as we're developing, I'm going to be talking to a Postgres, and I wanted to use test containers. Now, Postgres is just one container that you can get from test containers. And by the way, look at that, this control space ability. I love it. I love it. So I've got this Postgres container. I'm telling Spring, hey, this is a container. It's going to start up a Docker image using my local Docker daemon. And I need to tell Spring that it should ask this Docker image for the credentials. And it doesn't know to do that until I tell it. So I'm going to give it this annotation at service annotation or at service connection. The next thing I want to do here is I want to make sure that when we restart the application using dev tools, which is a great way to live restart your application, we're going to say, don't restart this Docker compose or Docker instance rather, because that would take a little while, right? So the way to do that is to go to our build.gradle. We're going to make dev tools, which is by default development only. We're going to make it test implementation like this, so that it's available on the class path in my test code. And we're going to say restart scope. Okay, that's an annotation from DevTools that tells Spring to keep this bean alive, even though we're going to restart the rest of the application. Okay, so there's my test code in my test folder. I'm going to run that, and it's going to download the Docker image, and it's going to start up and everything, but it's going to have DevTools present. Okay, so let's go ahead and restart that. Wait for it to do its thing. You can see it's creating the container, Postgres 15.1 Alpine, blah blah blah, test containers.postgres, all this stuff, and you can see it's already derived the correct connection credentials, right? And for those of you who don't know, that indirection that allows that to happen is that we've got this new thing in Spring Boot called connection details. And basically it's this very generic interface, but it's this interface that we use as an indirection. We say, okay, we can get the connection information from any number of places, be it properties that you provide in your configuration properties, or from the Docker Compose API, or from the Docker API if you're using test containers, etc. So we've got that a little bit of indirection. So now all the auto configuration depends not on configuration properties, but on connection details, which in turn might depend on configuration properties or something else. Okay. Simon, did the root? You can use Podman. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can, right? I have no reason to think that. Did the root cause get found? No. So this is just a gamble. We're just going to flip the coin and see if this works. And I think it's going to be fine. Root for us, okay? We need all the positivity in the world to make sure this goes
we
fine.
mentioned, both of us did try that exact same application this morning, and it worked without any changes. So
no change. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and just run this again. Okay. So here we go. We got the test application. It's up and running. I'm going to talk to a database, like I said. So a couple things. We're going to have some schema here. We're going to have schema.sql. We're going to say create table post post ID serial primary key, title text, and then what was the other attribute? I think it was just body. Yeah, body text. Okay, there's this. And we're going to say create table if not exists. Okay, there's the post. We're going to tell Spring Boot to initialize the database, right? Because even though Spring Boot is starting up the test container for us, from the perspective of Spring Boot, this is a Docker instance, and that's therefore remote, because after all, what in the world isn't a Docker instance at this point, right? A container running in the cloud somewhere. So we're going to say this is a remote thing, and therefore we should connect to it and initialize the SQL database always, as opposed to just when it's embedded, such as when we're using H2 and HSQL and Derby and the like. Okay, so we're going to initialize the SQL always. That's going to run the schema. It's going to create the table if it doesn't exist, called post. That'll have these two fields. We're going to then create a program to talk to an API and get the data, and then with the API, we're going to read all the data and write it to the database. Okay, so in order to do this, I need a client to talk to a REST API. And friends, this is pretty straightforward. I could just write post API client. I could do that, and I could use the reactive non-blocking HTTP client like this. I could do all sorts of things here. But friends, that sounds suspiciously like work. So rather than do that, I'm going to use this new declarative interface mechanism in Spring Boot 3.x and Spring Framework 6.x. And I'm going to connect to an API to get a collection of new posts, right? So get posts, let's just call it that, okay? And this is an interface. I'm going to tell Spring Boot, using this new this new exchange annotation, that I want to call the posts endpoint to get the data. And I need to now configure how it connects and to what endpoint it connects and to what service and all that. So in order to do that, I'm going to use the sort of factory bean here to create the post API client, okay? So I'm going to inject the web client builder to have a say on how we build the web client that gets used to actually make these requests. So web client adapter dot client builder dot base URL equals HTTPS JSON placeholder dot typicode.com. Yeah. And I'm going to say .build like that. I'm going to say return HTTP service proxy factory builder passing in WCA .build .create client post API client .class. Okay. So we're saying create a reactive non-blocking client that's defaulting every URL to this JSON placeholder .typicode.com. And of course, it's going to suffix it with / posts for the path, arriving at a full URL from which we can get the JSON. Let's just make sure that's actually the case. We're going to go here, open this up. Okay, posts. There we go. There's our data. So that should work. Okay, we know that that's a valid URL. Now I want to like have a bean that gets run when the application starts up, and we're just going to call this initializer, right? Post initializer, post API client, post repository, return new application runner, and we'll say c.getPosts. And for each one of those posts that we get back, we're going to just write it to the database. I guess I could do this, right? I could say r.saveAll. Much better. And just to keep things clean, I'll say r.deleteAll. Turn this into a lambda. Very good. So I'm going to clean up the repository, and then write all the data from the REST API. Okay. Well, I think that'll work. That looks like it should be okay. What do you think there, buddy?
Looks good to me.
Okay, good. And just to prove that it's working, let's do r.findAll. What's that?
But the proof is in running it. So let's see if this actually prints out what we need.
So that's a good point. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command Shift F9, which is actually on my keyboard. It's a little weird, but basically we're going to do this. We're going to do the recompile. Okay. So there you go. Let it do its thing. Actually, we don't have our user interface yet, do we? So we're going to go here. It's going to there we go. What happened? Delete all root.
Schema. I think that's, or did you build one while I was looking away?
Oh, there's the data.
There it is.
But why is it sad? And it looks like the data is coming back correctly. Okay, well, I don't know, whatever. It's up and running, right? It's fine. So what if we change this initialization logic to just print out, e dot title, okay? Command Shift F9 one more time. Build, recompile. I don't know. I forgot to disconnect my laptop, and for some reason my keyboard shortcuts. Okay, it seems to be running. There it is. There's the title. So it's fine. Okay, good. Ignore this. This is probably from when we had a schema issue. Yeah, it's from when we had a schema issue earlier. Failed to delete all. We don't have this table called post. Is that possible? Create table if not exist post. I feel like we already fixed that, so it shouldn't be an issue now. Okay, good. So we've got all the data. You can see we got all the data because that's the data we got from querying our database. So now we've got a application that's using test containers. One thing to bear in mind here, friends, is that if you're using Spring Boot 3.1, and 3.0 in general, one of the big things that's happened here is that behind the scenes, the servlet API and all the other Jakarta APIs have changed, right? So HTTP servlet request, for example, this type is as it was before, except that they moved it to a new package. And the reason this is important is because if you're depending on these lower level types, then you're going to notice that your code won't compile. It's not a big deal. Just do a find and replace, and you should have everything as you need it. Okay, so fine. And by the way, this happened only because Oracle at some point kind of just ghosted the community. Eventually, they were sort of cowed and brought back to the table long enough to open source it, but nothing is ever simple with Oracle. So they open sourced it, but only under the condition that the code be in a new package. Any changes to the code, rather, be in a new package. So, if you add a method, delete a method, change a method, whatever, it has to add a new type, change a type, whatever. It has to be in a new package. And so the Eclipse Foundation dealt this sort of political problem, did as best as they could technically to make the problem less painful. And what they did was they took Java EE7, released it under Jakarta EE8, exactly the same, no new changes at all, but they have a new license and the new documentation and the new TCK and all that stuff. Then they released Jakarta EE9, which is the same exact code as before, but except the new package, Jakarta dot whatever. And then they did, and so on. They're moving on forward. So they've done a great job of making it so that from a technical perspective, all we have to do to on-ramp into the new world is to just do find and replace. Just once. And then you're in a good place, right? These APIs, like the Servlet API and like so many others, will finally be able to upgrade and update to sort of account for modern use cases, which is good because, again, remember, Project Loom is coming, Java 21. That means that suddenly the Servlet API can handle reactive-like scale. This is a really good situation to be in. Just update to Java 21, use the right version, and you'll get even better scale with amazingly scalable technologies like Vaadin and Spring Boot. Anyway, okay. So we've got our thing. We've got data in the database. I think it's time now, friend, to build a sort of a web app, right? We need one of those. So,
yep.
Let's see. We need I could build an HTTP endpoint and send out some JSON or use some GraphQL or something. But again, I just want to go to production. I just want to build something very quickly. So we're going to use Vaadin, right? Vaadin is how you say, I'm going to go home on time. Okay, so I'm going to build a posts, what do we call it? Post view, I guess. Extend vertical layout. Okay. And we're going to have a constructor because, Java. And in this constructor, we're going to inject a pointer to our post repository. Okay. And again, because it's just a Spring Bean. So we're going to use that repository. I'm going to say find all. And that's the data, right? Data. And what I want to do is I want to initialize a data grid. So I'll say new grid. This is a component, right? A new grid of type post.class. Okay. Like so. There we go. And we're going to add some columns. So we're going to say add a post body dot set header is the text or whatever, and we're going to do the same thing for the post ID, right? The surrogate ID that the database assigns it. Okay, and arguably that should be first, and then we'll do the title, and this will be okay. So I'm just adding columns to the layout. I'm also going to set the data on the grid. I'll say grid.set items, right? Items. Good. And we're going to pass in data there. And by the way, this data, I can have like a button that I then call a database, and then in response to the button, I set the data, right? I don't have to do it in the constructor, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to have a title. So new H1, data. Okay. Okay. And then we're going to add those components first to the H1 and then the grid to the component, to the layout. Does that look right? Did I miss anything obvious here?
Nope. Looks good.
Okay. Maybe I'll just clean that up a little bit. There you go. So two nice little components. Pretty straightforward. It kind of feels like writing Swing or JavaFX or SWT or something.
It's sort of like you're a little bit abstracted away from the web of it all. So it looks like you're building a desktop application, whereas it does actually run. So you're not really working with requests and responses. You're working with events and reacting to them, updating the UI based on those. Yeah. So when you say a little bit, I think you're being a little You're understating things a little bit. Yeah. So this somebody asked where do these components come from? They come from Vaadin, right? These are Vaadin UI components. We went to start.spring.io, added Vaadin to the dependencies, and now we have this nice component layout. Okay. So now go to the browser, localhost. There's our data, right? Yep. Tables and all that stuff. Easy. Very nice. Like and you look at this, it's JavaScript. There's a little bit of that stuff there behind the scenes. Disgusting. Get it out of my mouth. Get it out. But we've got some of this JavaScript here. It's doing unspeakable horrors, and I don't care. Like it works. That's the important thing. And this is the development mode, by the way. This is the inefficient, more debuggable, traceable version of the code. Is that true? Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So if you do like any kind of extension work, you want to actually like see what's going on inside of any of those components, you can use the browser dev tools. There are source maps and everything. You can dig in if that's something you want to do most case when you're using Vaadin Flow, that's not something you're gonna want to do at all.
Yeah. So does this mean it replaces Angular and lets us connect using cores from Spring Cloud Gateway? Well, there's no endpoint here. That you wouldn't use Gateway to. You could proxy this JavaScript web app to some other point using Spring Cloud Gateway, but it doesn't. This is it's not exactly a REST. It's not a REST endpoint. It's not GraphQL. It is the web app itself and the business logic for the web app all in one deployable bundle. How do we customize the UI? Well, that's a good point, Marcus. How do we make this thing look a little differently if we wanted to? This asks this nice question.
We can use themes essentially, or essentially Vaadin comes with a theme that is customizable by using some CSS variables, so we can define things like roundness and colors and stuff. So do a Google search for Lumo theme editor, LUMO theme editor, and click on that, the first one there.
Oh.
So just go there and like switch between light and dark, for instance. You can kind of see how they react, and then you could go ahead and change like if you in the sidebar there, take the primary color and change that to like, I don't know, red, green, something.
So cool.
And yeah, so you can kind of tweak these around, and then when you click on download, essentially it'll show you the CSS you need to paste into your application's style sheet.
Wow, and typography, and so you could override things manually, but if you just want to like change the industrial look and feel kind of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of flexible enough that you can get it probably close enough for kind of matching your company look and feel, colors, whatever, just by mainly working with these. So you don't have to spend too much time. And the idea is that because they're all from the same design system, same component set, you're going to end up with an app that looks kind of consistent by not having to kind of style each one of these separately.
Wow. This is cool. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. It's
really anyway, that's a little sidetrack, but let's get back to our.
I love this stuff. This is what I'm paying for, right? I want to go to production now. Don't make me deal with this stuff. I just need to get a form that somebody can use to get some data into the system. Yeah. Okay, so we've got our data, we've got our application. Friends, Vaadin started for the win. Yeah, absolutely. But of course, you should be using Spring Boot. Do any of your users, Marcus,
use a Spring Boot by default? So you're going to end up with a Spring Boot project. So the Vaadin starter does use Spring Boot as well. So if you do end up going that way, you'll end up with a Spring Boot project nonetheless. So
you're fine. So okay, I take it 1 or 2 users are using Spring Boot for the Vaadin community.
I'd say the vast majority are. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So there's going to be good documentation, good community support, all that kind of stuff. People will know what you're asking about and how to point you in the right direction. Okay. So we've got our application. It's pretty trivial. We got some data from our HTTP endpoint. We're persisting it into our data tier. We've got Postgres. It's fine. Now, this is both the server-side backend and the client-side front end. That's the nice thing. So when we talk about deploying this to production, we're talking about deploying one thing, one container, one app, one whatever. Right, one jar, right? And so I want to get this to production. The first thing that's going to happen is, first question, of course, is how do I containerize it? Obviously, the answer here has always been use build packs. I love build packs. Remember, friends don't let friends write Docker files, right? So build packs are a great way to sort of sidestep that nonsense. You can just pass it an application artifact, be it a .jar, .war, whatever, and you can use the pack CLI directly. Or if you're using Spring Boot, you can go here and do GraalVM build boot image. That's one option. Or if you're using Maven W spring-boot build-image, right? Very good. So we have all these nice options to take advantage of build packs, right? And by the way, that's a good question there, Marcus. Are these components responsive? Well, a little bit. Yeah, look at that.
Themselves are responsive, and you can, like, in addition to changing stuff with those theme variables. Everything is themable with just regular CSS as well. If you like really want to start playing around with different responsive things, you can.
Right. And look, this is the hardest problem in computer science. Forget large language models and generalized AI. Getting 3 columns in CSS, and we're just doing it. It's right there. We're already there. It's amazing. So okay. So anyway, we've got this. We've got build packs. It is a great way to get your application containerized. I'm not going to demonstrate that here because it's not a new thing, and I'm not going to deploy this right now, but I could. The next thing I want to do is take this application and make it as scalable and efficient as possible. And here, friends, I think it's worth pointing out that Java is already fairly amazing in that way, right? Here's a great blog from 2018, so five plus years ago, May 20th. Actually, it's 5 years and 5 days. How convenient. And this blog looks at the normalized global results for energy, time, and memory for Java, and obviously for different programming languages, and it compares them. And it says that C is the most efficient of the languages, Rust the second most efficient. That is to say, let's say you did a simple Fibonacci series in these different languages, which one would waste the most energy, right? Or the least energy. C wastes the least energy. Rust, slightly less than that, or slightly more waste than C, right? It's hard to talk about the least without using superlatives in the positive. And then C++ wastes ever so slightly more, Ada ever so slightly more, but again, who cares? And then Java, and let's say that Java is like twice as inefficient, or rather C is twice as efficient as Java. Okay, so it's 2 times worse from an energy perspective than C is, which is not great. But consider where we stand relative to other languages of the day, right? C# coming in at 3 times plus 3, more than 3 times inefficient as C. Go. This one, JavaScript, get out of here. Look at that, disgusting. 4.45. So it's 4 times, at least 4 times more inefficient than C, and at least twice as inefficient as Java's. And then there's Racket, which I don't know. And then there's TypeScript, and I don't understand this one, man. This is 4 times as inefficient as JavaScript, which is in turn twice as inefficient as Java, right? So what does that mean? That's 8 times? No, I'm sorry. TypeScript is 10 times as inefficient as Java. Did I do the math right?
I think so.
2 times 10 is at least 20. So yeah. Okay. So we've got I'm just saying, Java is doing pretty good. And this kind of pains me right here. This is Python. Python is now coming in at 75. This is the language that runs the AI world, right? So it's a little unfortunate that it's burning data centers and forests in its working, At least it's not Bitcoin, right? At least it's not that. It's still far more generous for the planet than that.
Well, fortunately, a lot of the Python languages do defer the heavy operations to like libraries written in C. So
yeah, absolutely, which gets us back to up here, right? And by the way, Python is amazing. I don't care what anybody says. It's a great ecosystem and a great language and whatever. It's just a little unfortunate. All that to say, even the language I love, Python, is doing pretty miserably compared to other languages, right? And Java is in the top 5. So it's a pretty efficient language already, but still, I think there's room for slightly more efficiencies. And one thing I might want to do is to make the application more scalable, more efficient. Java is already very efficient and very scalable because of 2 things. One is the Java garbage collector. The Java garbage collector is amazing. It's a miracle of modern technology. It lets me write fairly inefficient software and still get pretty amazing performance. That said, I do want to take issue with the idea that the Java garbage collector is the first Java garbage collector. That honor surely belongs to somebody else, perhaps even this person. Her name is Jesselyn. She's a product manager at Fan House in, I think, New York. But she's also, as she says in her bio, unapologetically Indonesian. And she has this great tweet: "I'm from the island of Java, Indonesia. I am the Java garbage collector," which just makes me happy because, friends, look how many people liked that tweet, right? There's almost 20,000 people. That's the intersection. It's the Venn diagram between geography, Indonesia, actual garbage, the Java programming language, and garbage collection systems for languages. The intersection of all those different interests meet here, and we still have 20,000 people. Sometimes the internet is amazing, okay? So that's cool. But the other thing that makes the Java programming language so efficient is the just-in-time compiler. And the just-in-time compiler, it looks at code that you're running, and it looks at code that is not too dynamic. That is to say, it's not loading new types at runtime. It's not doing serialization, reflection, proxies, JNI, etc. And if it finds code that's sort of free of any of that dynamic behavior, it'll then optimize it, right? And it'll turn it into operating system and architecture specific native code. And this native code, it runs very, very fast, right? It's one of the reasons why large organizations like Google and Alibaba and so on are very happy to deploy an application written in Java to a staging area, warm it up by directing traffic at it to incite the just-in-time compiler, and then deploy it to production, where it'll handle production loads with ease. So the just-in-time compiler is another amazing piece of the language. Now, if it's so great, you might ask, why not just have a proactively compiled to native code version of the build, right? And this is a great idea, and that's actually the core conceit of GraalVM, which is a open dedicated distribution, which includes a few other things, including a just-in-time compiler and an ahead-of-time compiler called the native image compiler, and a polyglot VM called TruffleVM, which allows you to take Ruby and Python and whatever and run them on the JVM in the same process as your Java code and your Kotlin code and so on. So GraalVM is awesome. But again, it still gets a little frustrated. It still gets tripped up by the likes of serialization and proxies and so on. So you have to provide configuration in JSON config, right? By the way, this is my new thing, okay? And I'm gonna make it. We're gonna make this work, friends. The question is, how do you by the way, those new stack results are from just regular Java, right? Just regular Java interpreted, maybe JIT, I don't know, but not AOT. Okay, that's 5 years ago. So my thing is, friends, I think we should consider that there are other ways to pronounce the word JSON, right? Obviously, in English, you might say JSON, but as a French speaker, I also would say JSON, which sounds to me a lot better, and I think we should now standardize on that. Will sound cooler, but in the doing, and it'll make it more pleasant to use JSON in our daily lives, because as painful as it is to write JSON without its schemas and all that, it would be nice if we could all just say JSON. So we've got this need for JSON configuration. Spring, by dint of the fact that it's your framework and it's sitting in the at the beating heart of all the integrations, it knows about a lot of the places where this configuration is required. So one of the big features in Spring Boot 3.0 is we actually support a just-in-time. We support an ahead of time engine, right? A new engine that will actually generate this JSON for you so that it can feed it into the GraalVM native image compiler. So it's really cool. It's really powerful, real fast. We're going to go ahead and use that now, okay? And here, friends, should I do an npm install, do you think? I don't think I need to. I didn't do it today.
Let's go ahead and get those application properties in production mode.
Oh, right. We also have to do a couple things. You're right. We need to set up a whitelist for configuration for component scanning. So Vaadin whitelisted packages. We want to do com.vaadin. We want to do org.vaadin. We want to do dev.hella. And of course, the package in which our code lives is beautiful.vaadin. Okay. So I'll add that there.
I created a
go to our build.
By the way, so hopefully we don't have to do this step in the near future anymore.
Right. Production mode equals true, not true. True. Good. Okay. I think we're gonna be okay.
Yep.
So we've got. Does that look right? Anything else?
That looks right. Now all we need to do is hope. Cross fingers.
Please. We're gonna let this do its thing. And I'm not gonna look away. Normally we would have a whole thing where I talk about how I've tried to help improve the situation here, but frankly, I won't be able to pay attention. So we're just gonna stare at this and again, keep your eyes and fingers crossed, everybody. Come on, this is important. Let's get this done. Come on. See, this is where it crapped out yesterday. It was doing something with npm here, right? Look, npm, disgusting, and it was causing some sort of flakiness. And as Marcus so amazingly chimed in earlier, this won't be required later, right? It will be, I guess, in the next 24 hours.
If this works, if we want to try it out later, doesn't need to be a part of this stream, but we can try the 24.1 beta 2. Oh wow. What happened?
All
right, let's see. Scroll down.
Why?
Uh,
Why? Why does this happen every time? What if I did a VPN? Is it like I don't understand why this is so
I don't
painful.
know. Can you at least like copy that failure into a separate file and like let's collect that and I can do something about it. Seems to be like it seems to know when we're live streaming is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep a log of failures there and hopefully we don't. So wait.
Package that lock. Do I need to build it without the production mode equals true first?
Let me write here. It's failing with.
In the meantime, is it a reliable choice to use GraalVM CE instead of Temarin JDK as a JIT compiler in production at this point? I don't know what Temarin is. Does it do GraalVM? I don't know. Like you can use Liberica, or you could use GraalVM, the official one. And yeah, I think it's fine. Why wouldn't it be fine? I don't know. Okay, so
can you scroll up just a little bit there so I can see what the error is? I'm debugging this in our Slack as we're.
Oh, here, let me just. This one.
Okay, there it is. Failed to load config from.
My MacBook has, yeah, I'm using an Apple M1 Arch 64.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm doing a build now. Look at this. I did that without production mode, and it seems to have gotten further.
Yeah.
But of course, it won't work when we run it, right?
It might. I mean, the development mode will do all kinds of extra stuff that is definitely not needed in production. That could.
That's good. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, let's see if this works, and we could definitely try that.
Yeah, I think this will fail because it's going to complain about dev tools and all this other stuff that shouldn't be there. But okay, I'm going to let it run. It got to native compile. It's already made it further. Temarin JDK. Okay, yeah, it's not OpenJDK. It's not in OpenJDK. GraalVM. It's a superset of OpenJDK. So you need a thing that houses the native image compiler from GraalVM, not just OpenJDK. But there is hope that one day it'll arrive. Remember, they talked about they announced last Java 1 that GraalVM would ship relatively in sync with OpenJDK. So you get OpenJDK and then like a week or whatever, or a month later. Yeah, it supports M1. I'm using M1 right now. It supports Linux, x86. Oh, that worked. Why did that work? So build, native image, native compile, Vaadin. Okay, it's going to fail because it's going to miss the DevTools types, right? Oh, and also the port's already in use.
That's a very easy thing to fix that we can do.
Yeah. Okay. No, see that? Okay, there we go. That's fine. Unable to start it because of some sort of initialization. I think we saw this before, and this is the production mode thing. So it's back. We know this is going to fail. I knew at least it compiled, right? And maybe it downloaded all the JavaScript bits that we need to make it work.
Go ahead and let's go into your Gradle file and let's use that newer version of Vaadin. Let's see if we can.
Let me just try this one more time with production mode back. Now that we've successfully downloaded everything without production mode. Just one more time. I want to believe it'll fail soon, right? What could go wrong? Did it already do the JavaScript stuff?
Let's see.
I don't understand. Did it or not?
I don't know.
Looks like it's already. So maybe that's the trick. Maybe do the native compile without this and then do it with. You have to have it at least once.
Shouldn't have to. Like I did a full clean checkout of the project yesterday and it just worked. So I don't know what's going on. There's clearly something. The good news also about not running npm with the new version is that obviously since we're skipping a bunch of work, it will be faster.
Yeah.
Okay, but at least we're getting much further.
Further. Come on.
Yeah, we definitely did not get this far last time.
Which is a shame too, because it was, like I said, it was, my heart was in it. I was really like invested in seeing that finish line and then sticking the dismount, and then it disappointed me. Not once, not twice, but like 20 times on stream. Oh. I've been hurt before, GraalVM. Don't do this to me, or npm.
Yeah, let's not blame GraalVM for this. Not a GraalVM thing. All blame should be placed on npm for that one.
100%. Which brings us back around to, oh, okay, so it's gonna fail this time. We know it's gonna fail because it doesn't have a database, right? Remember, we didn't ever specify Spring data source URL and password and all that stuff. So I have a little script here, desktop talk run, okay, and the binary is in the build native image native compile directory. So pwd pb copy. I'm going to take this command. I'll say home. Actually, I'll just do this right here. Vaadin, right? Comment that out. I'm going to set the database to be equal to the connection that it would get if it were to run, if I were to run this Docker compose file. So cat docker compose.yaml. I'll just do docker compose up. There's this. It's going to start up that Postgres instance 15.2. Whatever. Although I really should, for tests, you should really synchronize these things, right? So this should be, ideally, I would replace this with that. I'm using 15.1 Alpine. I'm using 15.2 full fat. I'm sure it's, backwards compatible, certainly within the point releases, but nonetheless, these things should line up. Okay, so it's got the Postgres instance. I'm going to call run desktop talk run.sh, okay? And what that's going to do, it's going to start up the application, give us the post data, etc. Okay, localhost. There's our data.
Yep.
Oh, why? Okay.
Wow.
So
close. Like we got that one error, and at least we got it working this time. So that's
redeemed. Mostly. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. If anybody asks, chat, it worked. It was the first time. We stuck the dismount. It was great. Like there was no issues here. We finished like 10 minutes ago, and everybody went home happy. Okay, well, I think that was good. So anyway, I hope you got something out of this. I hope you learned some new ways to build applications quickly, more productively with Spring Boot 3.1, and of course, Vaadin. Now, Vaadin is a great way to get up and running and going quickly. I liked it. What about you, Marcus? Did you have fun?
Yeah, I definitely had, especially since we got it working finally. If you can send me that log, I will dig deeper into that. We have very well documented what we did to cause that. It's out on YouTube, so everyone can see what happened, and we'll sort that out. So
time code is 1 hour and 1 minute. At this point, let's call this good. We're gonna move on. Yeah. We're gonna try and upgrade it. Let's see if that fixes it, right? But this video, this right here, we're good. We can call that a successful presentation. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a great day, and see. Okay, now, so what do we have to do to upgrade this to the new stuff? I want to try it out.
So just in your Gradle file, let's update to the latest beta we have. So that's 24.1.0.beta 2.
Wait, 24.1 0 beta.
It's a point between, so point beta 2.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's it?
That should be it.
Easy. Okay, so go down here, downloads. Vaadin, Gradle, native compile. Oh.
Wow.
Okay, well, at least that failed quickly. Oh, We need to set up the bill of materials.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, maybe that's for another.
Should I bother? How do you get the bill of materials for Gradle for Vaadin?
It's not so much that it's using our pre-releases are in a separate repo, so we'd have to set that up. And
okay, we'll do it off stream. If it's great, we'll come back to you. Either way, so excited that we're yes. So okay, for now, what do we? I don't know. I don't really feel like what I did made the difference though, because we did it both from a git clone and run earlier today, and it was just fine. Like, just fine. I watched it with my own eyes after having a cup of coffee this morning.
Yep.
And it failed me on screen, but it was fine earlier, right?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So it does seem to have some sort of detection on when you are actually live streaming things, and it will just fail a little bit more consistently.
Yeah. I don't know. Entropy. Maybe we need to debug live. This is Schrodinger's demo. People are watching. It's being observed, so it's flaking as a result. Quantum.
Anyway, please do send me that log file or output, and I'll dig into that some more.
I saved it off to a file, and I would tell people hey, I'm going to check the code in, but I swear this is exactly the same code as here from yesterday. Just go get this. Exactly the same damn code.
As long as you're not live streaming while you try to run it, it will work.
yeah. Just don't do what I'm doing, right? Like, here's the same code: application runner, delete all, save, find all, post API client, use the JSON placeholder, blah blah blah, post view, h1 grid, set the items, find all, add, post API client, get all this stuff. I don't know. And we did production mode. Here's the Vaadin production mode equals true. The version is 2405. I mean. Oh, here's the bomb. Oh, we need the dependency. We need the repository. Yeah, right. Yep. Okay, anyway, that's the same. It's exactly the same, diff for diff. So, well, whatever. We did it. Good job, everybody. Yep. I'm going to put out a podcast today, and I'm going to just say that we did great. It was stuck it in the first try,
Yes.
Did you not reload did you not do the reload thing in the Gradle file? Well, we didn't reload in IntelliJ, but we didn't need to because I was running on the command line, right? Yeah, the native image compilation was happening in the command line there, Naveen. Good question, though. Good question. Thanks for helping. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marcus.
Declare this a success, and
I'm going to declare it a W. Yeah, exactly. We need one of those. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.